We use them every single day, but have you ever really stopped to think about what you're actually saying? Well, get ready, because we're about to dive into the secret code of our language, the wonderfully weird world of idioms.
I mean, really think about that for a second. Have you ever actually barked up a tree, let alone the wrong one? No way. But we all know exactly what it means, and that's the kind of strange, cool stuff we're going to explore today.
So what in the world is an idiom, officially? Well, you can think of it like this. It's a phrase where the words themselves don't actually give you the real meaning. It's kind of like a linguistic shortcut, one that's totally packed with cultural history that we use all the time without even realizing it.
All right, so let's crack the secret code, shall we? We're going to start by looking at some of the most common idioms in English, just to see what makes them tick.
Here's one you've definitely used. When you want the latest gossip, what do you say? You ask your friend to spill the beans. But hold on, what does that have to do with actual beans?
The meaning, of course, is to reveal a secret. And this just perfectly shows what an idiom is all about. You've got this total disconnect between the literal picture in your head, beans spilling everywhere, and what it actually means. That little gap right there, that's where idioms live.
Okay, so now let's look at how these things are actually built. And one of the most common ways is by using colors to describe feelings, situations, even people. Here's a perfect example. Feeling blue. You immediately get a sense of a particular mood, right? And it's definitely not a happy one.
And there it is. We've all just sort of culturally agreed that the color blue means feeling sad or down. It's such a powerful shorthand that we don't even need any other words to get that specific feeling across.
Okay, here's another one. Say your friend gets that promotion you really wanted, or they go on some amazing trip. What color is that feeling?
You're green with envy. Yep. Just like blue means sad, green has become the universal color for jealousy. It's such a vivid, almost physical way to describe a really powerful emotion. And this just brilliantly shows how a single color can mean totally different things. A white lie? That's a harmless little fib. A white-collar worker? That's somebody who works in an office. But a white elephant? That's this useless, expensive thing that's a total pain to own. That phrase actually comes from the ancient kings of Siam. They'd supposedly gift a rare white elephant to a courtier they didn't like. The animal was sacred, so you couldn't make it work, but taking care of it would totally ruin you financially. Talk about a burdensome gift. Colors can even be financial opposites. If your business is in the black, you're making money, which is great. But if you're in the red, well, you're in debt. And this isn't random. It comes straight from old school accounting, when bookkeepers would literally use black ink for profits and red ink for losses.
Okay, let's switch gears. Another huge source for idioms is something we all deal with: the pressure of work, deadlines, and just trying to get things done on time. You can practically tell a whole story with these. Just imagine a student. First, they have to hit the books. Then, as the big exam gets closer, they start to burn the midnight oil. The night before, that's crunch time. And hopefully, they pass with flying colors. See? It's a whole story arc in just 4 simple phrases.
But what if things don't go so smoothly? What if you just barely make it? This next phrase captures that feeling of a near disaster perfectly. To succeed by the skin of your teeth. Isn't that such a weird and graphic image? I mean, teeth don't have skin, but it just perfectly gets across that feeling of a razor-thin margin of success. And that brings us right to our next theme, the language we use to talk about the final results of all that hard work. Success and failure.
Let's start on a positive note. Sometimes a task isn't a struggle at all. It's easy, it's simple, and maybe it's even kind of enjoyable.
We call it a piece of cake. It's this cheerful, positive little idiom that tells you everything you need to know about how easy something is. But of course, things aren't always so sweet, are they?
And our language is just full of expressions for both sides of the coin. You can hit the big time or sail through something. Or your project can go belly up and you totally miss the boat. But my favorite one here has got to be back to the drawing board, because it admits something went wrong but points you toward a second chance.
So we've seen what they are, and we've looked at a bunch of examples. But the big question is, why? In a world that's all about clear, direct communication, why do we rely on these strange, roundabout phrases?
Well, the truth is, idioms aren't just little linguistic quirks. They're actually essential. They're the shortcuts that add personality and color to what we say, and they connect us to a shared history.
They can pack a really complex idea into one memorable phrase. And honestly, they just make language more creative and fun.
And this really hits the nail on the head. Digging into the history of these phrases often unlocks their meaning completely. For instance, burning the midnight oil makes perfect sense when you remember a time before electricity, when people had to rely on actual oil lamps to work late into the night.
So I'll leave you with this question to think about. Language is always evolving, right? The slang phrases that are common today might just become the piece of cake or spill the beans of the future. So what's your bet for the next great idiom? Thanks for listening.